Peter Moore, welcome back to Liverpool, your hometown.
Yes.
Good to see you. Thank you very much for coming in.
Delighted to be back on this wonderful week.
Indeed, indeed. You gave us two very rich 3am conversations, and I want to get to those as quickly as we can, but a little bit of context first. Obviously, as you say, this wonderful week, we're recording this today on the Thursday after our beloved Liverpool were crowned champions of England. But, of course, things went a little bit wrong the following day, and you were in town, I think, on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, it was a chilling moment, and it was so sad that pretty quickly the entire town turned somber from apparently 1.5 million of us just having this euphoric moment. And let's not forget, and I was on the bus last time for winning the league, winning the Champions League, but then we win the Premier League and we couldn't have a parade. Yeah. So this was a 2-for-1 deal. Yeah. So it was twice the joy, if you will. But I'm amazed and so happy that there were no fatalities, because when you looked at the aftermath in the first few minutes and you watched the video, which is chilling. So tragic, but let's not forget why we were there, and let's let that overwhelm the tragedy that has occurred.
Indeed. And, of course, our city has pulled together in a fantastic show of support since Monday.
Yeah, I was watching Twitter in those first few hours of, Dave from Skelmersdale saying, I'm coming into town now to pick up my sister. I can grab a couple of you and head you back that way. Somebody's going to Manchester, said, I've got a van. You can all pile in the back if you're stuck. My brother was here with his son. It took him 12 hours to get back to Wrexham.
Right.
And just... the railway stations were overwhelmed, and the police were closing off the streets, obviously, so it became a little chaotic. But Scousers being Scousers, we all somehow got home in one piece, and it was a sad ending, but when you think about it in retrospect, it shouldn't dampen why we were there.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
So before we get to your 3am conversations, let's put again a bit of context about you. So give us the potted history. How does a lad born in Sefton General off Smithdown Road, born in Toxteth, end up leading a sportswear brand, several gaming companies? You were a tech titan before anyone was called a tech titan these days. And then you end up being CEO of one of the most iconic sporting institutions on the globe.
The most iconic.
The most iconic sporting institution on the globe. And I'm sure there's more to come. I don't think we're lying down yet. Yeah. So go on, give us the potted history.
Born March 1955, Sefton General, like most of my generation here in Liverpool, the old Toxteth workhouse from Victorian times, now the Asda on Smithdown Road. Yeah. My dad, docker, freight clerk on the docks. My mum was a nurse at Alderhay Hospital. And my dad always wanted his own pub, so our first pub was the Dryden Arms, which sits between Scotty Road and Great Homer Street, actually on the corner. Dryden Street's still there, on the corner of Dryden Street and Great Homer Street. We then moved down south to Garston, Speke Road, the Gay Cavalier, a Bent's pub, right next to the Speke Road Gardens, the Tennies, right opposite Bryant and May Match Factory, and a free kick away from Speke Airport, before it was Liverpool Airport. And that was a tough place. And my dad was the manager then for Bent's, but always wanted his own pub. And as folklore tells us, he goes to Bangor-on-Dee point-to-point steeplechases and comes back through between Wrexham and Chester to a little village called Marford, stops in at the Red Lion in Marford and loves it. And somebody whispers in his ear, this place is up for grabs as regards Burtonwood Breweries is looking for a new licensee. So my dad always wanted his name over the door and throws his hat in the ring and gets granted the license for the Red Lion in Marford. We moved from Liverpool when I'm 10, 1965, and we moved to Marford, which is on the A483 between Wrexham and Chester. And that's kind of where I grew up. Somehow the next year, which is a crossroads in my life that I've always thought about, I passed the 11 plus. To this day, I still have no idea how I passed the 11 plus. But as you know, in those days, that sent you off on a different path in life. And that allowed me to go to Grove Park Grammar School for Boys. I did my O-levels. I did my A-levels, and I was a decent football, and football was already becoming my life. I always wanted to be. I idolized my physical education teacher. So I became a PE teacher. I went to Madeley College of Physical Education, got my degree there, got a job in Llangollen. Llangollen, as many people know, has the Eisteddfod, this international music festival, which still runs to this day and is a superb showcase for North Wales and its roots in music. And that allowed me to go to America. I met an American who came over from Ohio, and he said, come to North Olmsted, Ohio, and coach kids, and I'll give you $100 a week and somewhere to live. And again, that moment in time, I go to America. First time is probably 1978, and I fall in love with America. The optimism. So every summer I would go back, and one snowy day in Llangollen, December 1980, my college professor, who had moved to Long Beach, California, said, could you come join me as director of soccer? And I said, give me a week to think about this, and I didn't really need much thinking about it. Quit my teaching job, took a huge risk, cashed in my pension, and my girlfriend, who then became my wife, we headed off to America. Needed a real job. And this is where my life starts to change. And Patrick, well known to people of a certain generation, Michel Platini, Kevin Keegan, needed a salesman, commission only, Southern California. Here's a Toyota Camry. Here's a bag of samples. Here's some order forms. 11 years later, I'm president of Patrick, and worked my way through the ranks, moved up to Northern California. Reebok spots me. 9 years later, I am head of global sports market at Reebok. I'd come back to Liverpool to do the Reebok deal with Peter Robinson and Liverpool FC, which I thought would be the closest I would ever get to my football club. And an executive recruiter calls me and says, what do you know about video games? And as it turned out, Sega was looking for a head of marketing, Sega America. And the idea was if I could sell sneakers, as we call them there, to teenage boys, I could sell video games. Moved back. Within 4 months, I'm president of Sega. I'm mired in imposter syndrome for about 3 months because I have no idea about this industry. But being a Scouser, osmotically I absorb, and then within 90 days I'm leading press conferences, pretending I know what I'm talking about, but learn the buzzwords, and then pretty quickly I was deep into what the video game industry was about. 5 years at Sega. Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer spot me again. Steve Ballmer calls, can you come in up to Seattle, Microsoft? And we're looking for somebody to head up marketing for Xbox. I always remember, he said, we're looking for somebody that can punch Sony in the nose. And he said, we're a bunch of nerds here, and we don't have people like you. And for 5 years, I'm running Xbox, and I had an amazing time. And I loved Microsoft. I was a misfit there. I'm not an engineer. I'm pseudo-technical, and that's about it. But I'm the guy they put on stage, on television, and we absolutely kicked PlayStation's ass. And then I get an email, and I always remember this. This is 2007. Time to come home. And I can see the email now, and it's an executive recruiter, a headhunter, says EA is rebuilding its strategy. They are building label systems, and they need a president of EA Sports. And your background is perfect. Sports, video games, and I become president of EA Sports. We're building the FIFA franchise, NHL, Major League Baseball, and we're building what is now one of the biggest sports brands in the world. 2011, I become Chief Operating Officer of EA, $7 billion company. And again, I'm a Scouse physical education teacher, but I'm now COO of Electronic Arts, publicly traded company. And we're flying. We're going from this amazing evolution of selling discs to retailers or cartridges to the digital transformation of the company. 8,000 employees. Anyway, get a call from an executive recruiter once more, Spencer Stewart in London. And this was summer of 2016. And she says, would you ever consider moving back to the UK? It's a glorious San Francisco Bay Area day. We're flying at EA in my own office suite. I look out and I said, absolutely not. And she said, what if it's to be the CEO of Liverpool Football Club? All right, pause for thought. By this time I was going through divorce, and so my life was a little bit in turmoil. And look, my dad took me to Anfield in 1959. Liverpool 4, Leyton Orient 3, Ronnie Moran, Jimmy Melia, Johnny Wheeler, captain. I mean, and I've bled red ever since. And it was that moment in life where I'd made my money. I was comfortable, and I could do whatever I wanted to do that I felt would fulfill the satisfaction of what I needed to do in my career. I was leaving a lot of money on the table at EA, vested shares and what have you. But my partner then, Debbie, my wife now, American girl, never lived in Liverpool, never lived in England, promised the weather was great, got to live by the beach. But and off we go to Liverpool and end up on the Wirral. And my wife, Debbie, gets very involved in chair yoga. We formed the Peter Moore Foundation because the people of this city had put me on their shoulders when I was a kid. We focused on giving back to Alder Hey Children's Hospital, Clatterbridge Cancer Hospital, and food banks, importantly. Went to my first game at Anfield, and Ian Byrne and Dave Kelly there with this decrepit Ford Transit that I thought, what do you do with it? Well, we drive it to North Liverpool churches and we distribute our food. I said, does it make it to North Liverpool? So decided we're going to buy him a new van. Had to be purple because it was at Goodison one week and Anfield the next. And we became benefactors of fan supporting food banks. So, and a bunch of other stuff, Liverpool Philharmonic and just whatever I could do. I've been lucky in life, and whatever I could do to give back to the city that had given me the start in my life. And we were fortunate on the pitch, as you well know, during that period as well. But then it was time to go back, and headed back after the COVID season, which was traumatic. And instantly my old boss at EA got me involved at Unity, started writing my autobiography, and then somehow got roped into founding a football club in Santa Barbara.
Well, let's pause there because
and that's where we're at.
Right, okay, we're up to date. Yep. But let's move on to one of those times that caused you to have a number of 3 a.m. conversations. And I'll use your words, if I may.
You may.
In terms of how you introduced it to us. And you said as follows: you enter your 70s with a machine in your chest, literally keeping you alive from heartbeat to heartbeat. You take stock of the past and prepare for the final whistle, whenever it comes, with a clear focus on sorting your life out to make sure that those you leave behind are taken care of, and you leave no untidy loose ends. So what happened?
Woke up one morning in July of last year. Debbie, my wife, had gone off somewhere. My eldest daughter, Tara, is flying in, and I'm promised to pick her up. She's going to stay with us for a few days at Santa Barbara Airport. And I felt just a little lightheaded and a little out of breath. And I'm used to running up. And look, I go to the gym every day. I'm on the Peloton. I work out treadmill. I mean, you know, I'm as healthy as I can be of a man in his 70s. And I pinged Debbie. I said, yeah, I'm going to head to the airport and I'll pick up Tara. We'll be back. And as I'm driving, I'm still a little just off, you know. And so, like a typical man, I said, I'll go to Starbucks because that'll fix it. Go get my non-fat latte with an extra shot. Go to Starbucks. Drive to what they call in America the cell phone lot, where you wait the mobile phone and then go to the airport. And this device starts pinging me. And it's something I'd never seen before. And it said low heart rate. And I kept looking at it. And, yeah, I'm all right. And so I take a screenshot because my wife used to work for Fitbit. So Fitbit, if the health watches. Yeah. And the screenshot was BPM. Your heart rate is at 32 beats per minute. Low heart rate. And I'd never seen that before. And I'm going, and this is how stupid you go, 32. Well, that's beat, you know, and that can't be right. And so she says, do not move. I'll be right there. I was in Tara's car. Leave her car there. Tell her where it is. I'm coming to get you. And so Debbie arrives, pile into the car, straight to Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, which is only 7 or 8 minutes away. And you go in, urgent care. And in American hospital, there's a triage nurse that assesses what's going on with you at the door. And she says, so what's up? And I tell her, and she, sit down. And she radios this code ahead. And then 15 seconds later, she's got a wheelchair. Do you mind getting in the wheelchair? Oh, sure. You know, and I'm wandering around. And she pushes me down the corridor to an exam room. and the curtains open. There's a crash team in there. And they get on the bed and open the shirt, ready with defibrillator pads. They put pads on your chest, straight in with an IV, EKG, 13 sensors. And I'm going, what is going on? And I can hear the EKG printing out in the back, and the doctor, emergency room doctor, Dr. Richmond, who was hilarious, runs in with a paper like Neville Chamberlain going, this is not good. I just like, and I'm thinking, your bedside manner needs improving a little bit. He said, this is not good. He said, you're in complete heart block. I'm going, first of all, I go, what is that? And he says, your electrical system's failed. And so your atria and your ventricles aren't talking to each other. Your ventricles are packed in, and your atria are doing all the work, but they can't do it. And then the monitor that I see here is at 27 BPM. And he said, we're going to have to put a pacemaker in the next 2 hours. And, you know, classic American hospitals, a cardiologist appears out of nowhere. I think they had him in the cupboard. And Dr. Yousefian comes out of nowhere and says, I'm an electrocardiologist. And he said, as soon as we get the operating room ready, we'll get you going. We'll keep you stable, and we'll sort you out. And I'm still a little confused because I felt okay until I flatlined on, and I look at Debbie and said, must be a bad connection. And so I flatlined twice on there where the heart just couldn't keep up, and I felt it. And so then I thought, well, it's pretty serious now. So in I go, and I was fascinated. Again, I'm stupidly naive. I'm fascinated with the process. I go into the operating room, and it's like a command center with 6 plasma screens that's angled towards the bed. They put a little screen here, lidocaine on my chest, and Dr. Yousefian starts opening me up here. But I quickly realized the guy to my right, Ben from Abbott Tech, was my best friend because he's not a surgeon, but he's the technician sorting out and calibrating the pacemaker. And I'm saying, what are you doing? He said, I'm pacing. I said, what does that mean, Ben? And he goes, I'm about to take control of your heart with the machine. We're going to let your heart go, and I'll tell the surgeon when it's ready to go, when he's got the wires in. So the wires connect to your heart. He's pushing the wires in. And then he goes, now. And then I watch everything kick in on the screens. And he says, I'm calibrating you at 60 BPM at the low end. That's where you'll be. And we'll put you about 130. And that's what the machine will do for you. And it's always on. I rely on it to beat my heart.
Peter, what goes through your mind? Obviously, it all happens in such a rush.
Yeah.
But when something like that happens, do you sit there and think, you know, have this life moment where you think about all your successes? Or actually, do you think, oh, could I have done things differently as the Mora could have done? Do you think that deeply in a moment like that?
It didn't feel like I'm walking towards the light moment, no. And again, in my stupid naivety of the eternal optimist, I thought, well, they'll fix me and I'll be good to go, which they did. But I wasn't scared, which is weird, and I should have been. Because if this had been 60 years ago, I'm dead. There's no pacemakers in those days, and there's nothing they can do to fix your electrics. Subsequent to that, as you start mulling over in the weeks afterwards, you know, my wife is 12 years younger than me. You know, we have 6 kids between us that I have a responsibility for, you know, and you start thinking, you know, and again, my wife, Debbie, hates this, but I start looking at actuary tables and say, I think I've got 11 years left. Right? You do. And here's how much money we got. Here's what we've got here. Here's my estate plan. All of that you start thinking, and what you don't want to do is leave a mess. And what I want to do, I've said to my wife, you're probably going to live 20 years after I'm gone. And I need to make sure that you're going to be comfortable. You can maintain a lifestyle. Our kids are all adults now. And I want to make sure that we leave money for them and for their grandkids and what have you. This also prompted me to talk about, while I can remember, is to finish my autobiography, you know. And the one thing I do worry about fundamentally and bluntly is dementia. And when I was here at Liverpool, my heroes, the team of the 60s, the Tommy Smiths, the Ron Yates, the Ian St. Johns, the Roger Hunts, the Tommy Lawrences, to a person you were seeing dementia. And I've headed a lot of footballs in my life. I mean, not only as a player, but ironically more than probably a professional footballer, because I was a PE teacher. And for 8 hours a day, I'm either teaching football or rugby. And if I'm teaching football, I am literally teaching kids how to head a football. And so 150 times a day, I'm heading a football. And these weren't the lightweight footballs you have today. So I worry intensely about dementia. I worry how I'd react, the horror stories you hear of slowly slipping away, forgetting who are people. God forbid, becoming aggressive with your loved ones because you're confused. And so you start, in your mind, Lizzie, start putting your life together and tidying up all of the loose ends. And I've led an imperfect life, like a lot of us, and you want all of those loose ends to be tied up. Because the quality of life is something you think about as well. Yeah, I'm in my 70s, and I'll live to it. What will those final years look like? And you start to talk to people or watch people, and the generation ahead of you is passing away rapidly. And you look at the quality of life of those last few years. People say, I want to live long. I said, you want to live well as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
My dad had a stroke. My dad, for the last 2 years, didn't know who I was. I'd be with him, and he'd say, where's Peter? And Dad, it's me. And so you think about that. I've lived it firsthand, and I want a tidy ending. Yeah. When the look, do I want a lot of time added on by the ref? Yes, but that final whistle's going to come.
The last chapter's going to be a good one then.
Yeah, and you think about quality, and look, and people don't like to think about death, but as you have a moment like I had, the reality is it's actually not about you; it's about who's left behind.
This must resonate with you, Peter, as well.
Yeah.
Of course,
very much so. I mean, I was diagnosed November, December 22 with severe angina. We didn't know how severe at the time. And then I've got to tell the story now. You talk about bedside manner. So I'm with Rod Stables at Broad Green, Heart and Chest, the man who saved Gerard Houllier.
Yeah.
And the first thing they do with me is an angiogram to see whether they can stick the pellets in angioplastic. So I'm in the cath lab with 6 plasma screens everywhere, loud rock music blasting out for his team. And at one point, I've had the adrenaline bump. I recommend that. That's first rate. And he's trying to get the camera to have a look. And he says to his assistant, can you just move the camera slightly? So the camera moves. And then he says, oh, Christ, that's game over.
Oh, you're kidding.
What? He said, oh, sorry. It means you'll have to have a bypass. Don't worry, I'm sorry about that. And we moved on, and we're still friends.
I thought you were going to say you couldn't find your heart. It was a piece of stone.
No. Well, what he couldn't find, what we discovered then was that the main artery was gone. It was completely blocked. The secondary artery to the heart was 98%, which is pretty precise, but they could tell me it was 98%.
Yeah. And
I was being kept alive on the pulmonary arteries, which aren't supposed to do that. And basically you're having a quadruple bypass, and that's it. And like you, I was running around filling forms in and doing codicils to wills and powers of attorney and whatever. But I also found that I became the grown-up in the family very quickly. Because like you, Eternal Scouse optimism, 98% success rate at Broad Green, no problem at all, I'm going to come through. And if I die, I die. There's nothing I can do about it now. And I was very phlegmatic and focused. But my 2 lads fell apart, and they're big lads and, been through things, but they were no use to me. My partner is a theatre nurse, so she's following me around, in case I drop dead every 5 minutes. And there was only 2 weeks between diagnostic and operation. Another aspect of that you talked about when we were preparing for today was legacy.
Yeah.
And that you'd thought long and hard whether the reputation, the status, whatever you want to call it, that you'd worked so hard to develop would stand the test of time if you weren't there to represent it, was the way you put it. Was that a serious issue for you then? I
think, look, you get to a point in your life, and a long time ago at this point, where it's time to give back.
Yeah.
I have so many people have helped me along the way. You start giving back, mentoring, advising, giving people opportunities, putting people together, networking. LinkedIn is both a great tool and a pain in the ass, because it's like, I need 30 minutes. I don't know who you are, but I need 30 minutes of your time. And so, and I try to help as many people as I can. I can't ignore them, in the message that I get. But your legacy for me, I think that I give people from around here that opportunity to say, well, he was a Scouser and he was able to do this. And people ask me, how did you? And there's no easy answer from a lad from Scotty Road, you know, and I take him through. Passing my 11 plus was the first thing. And so, you know, I think my legacy would be one of my roots. I did a TED Talk here in Liverpool, not far away at the M&S Bank Arena in 2019, The Power of Scouseness. And I love TED Talks, and TED Talk had asked me to do something, and they had seen me I addressed the Oxford Union. I think the last Scouser to address the Oxford Union was William Gladstone. You know, it's just, and these are moments like pinch me moments, you know, and the Oxford Union invited me to talk about the socialization of football and its impact on a city like Liverpool. And so you get into this part of your life where you can give back, you got little pearls of wisdom you can give, and I'm always being asked to do stuff like this, and you know, the legacy would be, I didn't grow up, you know, a lot of people say, oh, we were piss poor. No, my mum and dad, you know, worked hard, not educated themselves, but worked hard and gave me a platform. And I hate to say this, sat here in Liverpool, but got us out of Liverpool only 25 miles away. But that was a different lifestyle. And that allowed me to progress through an all-boys grammar school and then on this path. And each step of the way, you could see more opportunity and kept going there. But I relate, as I do in my TED Talk, the power of being Scouse, that eternal optimism. We're a little cocky. We'll talk ourselves into things that we shouldn't be, and we'll talk ourselves out of things that we... And I've always held that as part of my character. People say, look, here's the deal. I say, I'm a Scouser. I grew up in a pub. My dad put me behind the bar at 11 years of age serving pints because my dad needed to stay upstairs. I opened the bar, I opened the Red Lion at 5:30, and he'd come down at 8 o'clock, and I'd go upstairs to do my homework. But it made me grow up. I was having adult conversations. I was talking to Wilf about working down Gresford Colliery, and I can see his hands now scarred with blue from the coal dust, and his face is one of somebody that's worked in a pit for 35 years. And so you grow up quickly. And then I said, I'm a PE teacher, which fundamentally is convincing 35 boys 8 times a day to do something they really don't want to do, which is get out there in the snow in T-shirts and shorts and play football or play rugby. And this persuasiveness you have to be a teacher as well. And so that concoction, that recipe is who I became.
Yeah.
And then I took that to America.
Yeah.
You know.
But you came home.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the second 3
a.m.
conversation. And, of course, you come back to our beloved Liverpool Football Club. And, again, I'll use your words if I may.
Okay.
Another thing that keeps me up at night is Liverpool. For 3 years, I had the privilege of leading one of the greatest football clubs in the world, Liverpool Football Club. And we had success, real success. Trophies, progress, stability. But still I lie awake sometimes thinking, what more could I have done? So what more could you have done, do you think?
For 2-3 years after I came back from here, I would relive incidents, my relationship with owners, my relationship with the staff, my relationship with the fans, which was controversial. My owners weren't completely thrilled with the fact that I would engage with fans, that I would be on social media and try to help people, and that I was out every night here, whether it was at charity events or speaking with the Chamber of Commerce and Visit Liverpool. And I felt that my role, which was very ill-defined, we were going through this movement away from the Ian Ayre CEO to Michael Edwards, sporting director, Jurgen Klopp, team manager, Billy Hogan, chief commercial officer, and then there's me. And I think about this a lot at 3 a.m. I figured out that my job was the 4 C's by sheer coincidence. Community. It's a football club. Community comes first. Civic relationships. Andy Cook, chief of police. Steve Rotherham. I immediately commissioned an economic impact report with Deloitte saying, what? Because I talked to people and I went to my staff. I said, we bring a lot of money into this city. How much? Oh, a lot. I said, I'm Silicon Valley guy. A lot doesn't mean so. I had Deloitte try to figure out exactly what the gross value add, the GVA of Liverpool Football Club was to the city of Liverpool, Greater Merseyside in the UK. And they came back 3 months later with a figure of about £500 million that this club, whether it's hotels, whether it's restaurants, whether it's Uber and taxi drivers, whether it's Liverpool Airport and planes arriving on Saturday mornings, supply chain operations of running a billion-dollar stadium and 2,500 people, casual workers each game day, all of that. And so I figured out that those civic relationships were very important because we were important to this city, as is Everton, but we were very important to this city. The third one was obviously commercial. We were up against teams that had a different source of funding than we did. And my owners were very clear, this is going to be a self-sustaining football club, and we're going to do things right, and we're not going to trip up over financial fair play, now profit and sustainability rules. And we, the owners, are not taking any money out of this, but we're going to build this club the right way. The same way that they had done with the Boston Red Sox and more recently the Pittsburgh Penguins of the NHL, which they also own. So you have all of that. And then you think about culture, and that's the fourth C for me. And we're here, in the Baltic. First meeting I had in June of 2017, all hands, about 700 people. I said to my staff, do you do all hands? Well, every now and again. I said, what are you doing? Well, we go to the Hilton. I said, I don't like that. Let's go somewhere where it feels Liverpool. Where is there in the Baltic? And somebody said, there's a place called Camp-in-Furness, but it's a little rugged and rustic. I said, perfect. And I, as I'm wont to do, I'd only been there 90 days, laid out what I felt our key objectives were and how we were going to proceed and how we're going to build the culture and how we're going to represent this football club both on a global basis and a local basis. And I coined this phrase in my head one night after 2 glasses of Pinot Noir. I realized who we were in 4 words: local heart, global pulse. It just came to me, and that's who Liverpool Football Club is. We leverage You'll Never Walk Alone, Bill Shankly, Bob Paisley, Kenny Dalglish, Anfield, everything about the tragedies that we've been through, right? The tragedies that we've been through, the joys and the triumphs and everything we've done, and you put all that together fundamentally in a marketing platform of this is who we are. And then that first year, New Balance and our marketing agency came up with this line, this means more. And I heard that and I thought about it. I thought, that's what it is. It does mean more to us. And other football clubs can get pissed off. Well, it means a lot. Not what it means to Liverpool. And you see who we were, what we've been through, all the way back, 1920s, 1930s, what we have done. It means more. So when we win, it means more to us. I don't care what you think about your football club, and you're great football clubs, but to us, it means more. And that is stuck. So, long answer to your question of legacy, but to my kids, it is your dad, grew up in different circumstances you do. They're American, and they've had the benefit of, my ex-wife was and is a brilliant mother for them. And they've had the benefit of nurturing and going to great universities in America that I was fortunate enough to be able to afford. My kids have gone to Berkeley, they've gone to Syracuse, they've gone to University of San Francisco. Next week, Brody graduates University of California, Santa Barbara. That's the last one out the door. All done. 6 of them. Books. Off the book. Well, they're never they're never off the books.
So, Peter, how was being at Liverpool different to any other roles you've been in before? So obviously they say, don't mix business with pleasure. Here, I guess you've always been on the other side of the consumer, but here you were the consumer, you were the supporter, the fan. Did your emotions mix with, the business side of things?
Yeah, it was complex because you're exactly right. I'm a fan. I knew the club backwards. I knew every player. I grew up on the Kop. Actually, I grew up in the Boys' Pen way before your time. But if you've ever read the book Lord of the Flies, that's what the Boys' Pen was, where it's like, and this sounds bizarre, a cage at the corner of the Kop where dads would throw their 11-year-olds in and hopefully collect them at the end of the game. And then our only goal when we got into the Boys' Pen was to get out of the Boys' Pen into the Kop. So And it really becomes, and so all of a sudden I'm CEO of my football. I'd never run a football. I'm CEO of the biggest club in the world. Have I ever been involved in a football club? No, but it's business is business, human interaction, building relationships, understanding the business, understanding what you need, what is the North Star, what is the vision, what are the strategies, objectives, and tactics that inform that, and that's where you go. It's no different. And in fact, in video games, I used a lot of the lessons I learned of community engagement. At EA, we had about 300 million fans that played our games, and we knew who they were. And so what we did at Liverpool was also, we may have more than that on a global basis. And a lot of my time was spent in year 2 and year 3 of building infrastructure, mobile apps, web applications that we can engage with our fans. The one thing I learned, and I was Exhibit A, is it seems the further you are away, the deeper in love you are with the club, and the more you want to absorb what's going on. Creating content, interviews with players, fun things that your sponsors can do.
It's the global pulse point that you mentioned.
And, fundamentally, and I never used these words when I was there, in video games we talk about an inverted funnel. And we open that funnel wide and we acquire. Then we engage, then we monetize. And that's what video games are all about. Now, I would never dream, I can say it now when I was there, of talking about monetizing our fans. But acquire, AEM, acquire, engage, monetize. And the engage was content and going to the training ground and getting Andy Robertson and Trent and Virgil and Bobby and Mo and Sadio involved in stuff that showed the human side of them, and making sure they went to Alder Hey every Christmas. Media crews going out. Inside Anfield, which is that behind-the-scenes thing, which was huge. It still is, where Sky Sports lets us have cameras in certain places, but we can't do it elsewhere. But I'm, sat in Santa Barbara lapping that stuff up, and the only thing, and then all of a sudden you're not. Then all of a sudden you're not the CEO anymore, and you're just a fan again. And it took me a long time to ease out of that and be watching at 4:30 a.m. for those 12:30 kickoffs and go, I know exactly what's going on right now, and I wish I was in the boardroom right now. But I'm there in my, always put a Liverpool shirt on and my jammies and watching the game as a fan again. I mean, one of the things I used to do, which I know is controversial, in the boardroom, I would get on the microphone before kickoff and welcome everybody. I don't know whether you would.
Yes, you did it when I was there.
And I went to Premier League games around the country and I thought, why doesn't anybody say anything? I'll tell you one anecdote. Game day is tense for me because it's not only the game, but I've got to make sure everybody's happy sponsors. We bring a lot of kids in that are going through tough times, and our sponsors at Standard Chartered would often give their box to families with kids having a really rough time. So I would do the rounds, say hi, shake hands, kiss babies, do the whole thing that you need to do. Debbie, my American wife, was very adept and very gregarious and could handle the boardroom and work with everybody. We're playing Manchester United, a little tense that day. And come back, I said, everything okay? You say, oh, yeah, just had a great conversation to a man about red wine, because my wife is a junior sommelier, amongst other things. And I go, wine? He said, yeah, a lovely Scottish man over there. And I go, Alex. And I go, do you know who that is? She said, Alex? No idea. And the naivety was wonderful. And he was so gracious.
Yeah.
Because they talk red wine and straight away. And then he then, unfortunately, has his brain aneurysm the next year, and we don't see him. And he comes back the next year, and one of his first games is to come back to Anfield. And so I get on the microphone, and I say, I welcome David Gill, welcome Sir Bobby Charlton. I mean, these were the ground. And a huge welcome back to Sir Alex Ferguson. And on behalf of all of us, I said, I hope there's many more Fergie times here at Anfield. Well, he starts crying, and so he sends me a handwritten letter, which I got framed after we won the league. And I didn't put it in the book because it's a personal thing. But the first line is, a letter I never wanted to write, handwritten. You have knocked us off our perch. And I have it. And
Wow.
and he said, you and Debbie always made me feel so welcome. And I love coming to Anfield, and I love the hospitality. So to me, it validated the fact that I would get on the microphone and welcome everybody.
Again, it's engagement, isn't it? Like
We're
you mentioned
Scousers.
earlier, exactly.
Yeah. And I felt it was weird, but I know it made... Some people would think I'm putting myself on a pedestal, or I'm showing off, or do whatever. No, it just felt weird to me that if you don't do that, it's just a restaurant attached to a football pitch.
Final question, if I may, and it's a leadership question in a way. But I was privileged to get to know you a little while you were in Liverpool, and was a big fan of how you ran the club. And what struck me was, you proudly told anyone who'd listened that you would respond to any DM or any email, as long as it wasn't abusive or destructive. You were very in the face of the city in terms of how you would interact with people. You then described it as your civic duty almost to be the CEO of Liverpool. At the end of the day, is it really all about the people for you?
In this city, it definitely is. And so this was the dichotomy. Is being a fan a plus or a negative? I felt it was a plus. I understood the people. I engaged in ways that other Premier League CEOs wouldn't. It was controversial within the club. That it was deemed, and I quote, unstatesmanlike to talk to the fans. But I'm living here. I'm walking from Chapel Street to exchange flags to Philpotts to get my Caesar salad at lunchtime, and I'm going to get 6 people along the way stop me, right? And give me their peace of mind. And I'll stop and talk to them, and depending what's going on that week. And great moments most of the time, And the first week this would be January, and I'm about to drop an F-bomb, but it's a quote. I'm walking to Starbucks, where I just went this morning on Old Hall Street. You know it well. I'm cutting up the back by the passport office. And we'd just gone through the Van Dijk controversy, where we were accused by Southampton of tapping up. Right? And we apologize, right? And so I'm walking back with my Starbucks, because that'll keep me alive, and walking back to Chapel Street, and a Scouser coming the other way. It's one of those little cobblestone side streets, and I don't know what it's called. And he looks at me, and he goes, "Oi, ballsy, should have bought Van Dijk instead of buying Starbucks, you soft ass." And it's like, this is a classic Liverpool moment, right? And I kept walking, I smiled, and I have nothing to do with tapping up Virgil van Dijk. But I thought, I'm home, I'm back. But I realized that the fans, they needed, we had absentee owners, and they needed to engage. They needed people to talk to them. Football is evolving rapidly, and Jurgen's coming in, but Jurgen's, his job is to stay at Melwood at that time and win games. Great. And my job is the business of it. So I would talk to people, and then I would engage on Twitter, and I would do things that my owners didn't feel was appropriate. But they didn't live here. They didn't live here. So the one thing I will appreciate, and it happened to me this morning, and it happens to me a lot. Right outside your offices, there's a guy that sweeps up, and I've seen him the 3 mornings in a row. And I don't know if you know who I mean here. And he comes up to me this morning, and he says the words that I've heard so many times that literally make me tear up. He said, "You're Peter Moore, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're the big cheese. You were the big cheese." I said, "Well, okay." And he said, "You made me feel closer to the club." And those are the words I hear all the time. Not, "You won the Champions League," because I didn't. Not because you won the Premier League. We were champions of everything, of everywhere. The words I hear and that resonate with me, and I'll keep to the day I die, is, "You made me feel closer to the club." Our club is everything. Sometimes I remember being on the bus, and I'm looking at people, and I can see their faces now. They don't have a lot going on in their lives. Their lives are tough, and they're hard-working people, but they got football. And when Jurgen Klopp leans over and shows them the Champions League trophy and looks them in the eye, it's the highlight of their life.
We could talk all day,
Yeah.
quite frankly, and I could listen to you all day, but unfortunately time's against us. And we never got near the next chapter, which is Santa Barbara, so you're going to have to come back. You've got to come
Part
back
2.
next time you're over here,
Part
and
2.
we'll do it all again.
I'll be over for the book launch, which is on September 29th. How
Right,
about
we're
that?
booking you
Got my
in now
plug in.
for part 2.
Yeah, perfect.
Peter,
Thank you.
you so much for coming
Thank
in
you,
and
Peter.
for being
Thank
so
you, Lily.
open.
Thank you for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Super. Thank you.